yourself.
That's loud.
You're gonna be here for 23 hours a day.
Man, there's no mirrors in here or anything. Can't tell if there's a window or a light.
As a psychologist, I can tell you that you are going to undergo many different kinds of reactions. And some of them will be more immediate than others.
Thinking about my mom. I see her in the corner of my eye.
A person would sometimes be in my cell with me.
Wow. Oh crap! Oh my god! Oh my god, that was so scary. Oh my god. What the heck? Oh, now we back. They act like nothing happened. That's hilarious.
My first question is, what did you see and what was it like?
Very small white cell. Seemed a lot like the sensory deprivation techniques. Like I read a lot about. I read a lot about advanced interrogation techniques, and one of the big things of that is sensory deprivation. So like make everything white, and I noticed a bit of that there. So I thought that was interesting. It's just a really small room that's very bleak. Not much that you can control or change.
Yeah. And do you think that solitary confinement is a viable option as punishment?
I do not think it is a viable option for punishment because not only is it ineffective because it usually drives people to more violence, it's also discriminatory and expensive and just like not ethical in any way.
I'm going to tell you a story about a boy named Ian who was in solitary confinement for 18 years. This was because he shot a woman while trying to rob her with his friends, and the woman didn't even die and requested for Ian to have a shorter prison time. He became a cutter in uninterrupted solitary confinement and could use one phone call a month. Do you think that that's justified, and does that change anything?
Oh no, not at all. That definitely sounds unjust. I really don't think that people should be in solitary over a week. Like that's just brutal, especially for a much more minor offense, or not even a minor offense, but there's plenty of things in like the penal code that are much worse than that, like rape and actual like planned murder and stuff. So I think, especially if you made him sound like he was a kid.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
There's some people, such as a woman named Angela Davis, who think about abolishing prison systems altogether, and she thinks that prisons are like taken for granted, and instead of questioning whether they're actual like useful facilities. So, would you be opposed to the idea of abolishing all prisons?
Yes.
Yes.
I think there are too many people in prison right now for crimes that do not warrant prison, for crimes that are not to the extent of like going to prison. So I think in that sense, I think there are other alternatives for people who have committed crimes that need to deal with the punishment of that. But I don't think abolishing prisons overall is a good idea, just because people need to be held responsible for their actions.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like if there's like another like better option, then for sure, yeah. Like something that wouldn't like mess prisoners up that way and would like actually like give them a like better chance like rehabilitating, like getting prepared to like re-enter society after like committing a crime like that.
What is your definition of justice?
I would say it depends. Justice literally means like if you do something wrong or somebody does something wrong to you, that justice is that you get like rightfully like back at them or like something like that. But I feel like it should more be like you made a mistake, you have to pay for that mistake. but that doesn't mean you need to suffer for it. That's justice.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
Be discussing solitary confinement today, and what I'm going to be doing is reading statements out loud, and if you agree, you're going to come and sit on these stools right here, and then you'll discuss, and then after about 3 minutes I'll bring in everybody to discuss the statement, and then everybody goes back to their seats, and then I'll read another statement. My first statement is: solitary confinement is dangerous for prisoners' mental health.
I definitely agree with that statement because you're not interacting with other people, you don't have much to do, so that can really mess people up. I mean, not being outside, but that's also part of being in prison.
I feel like over long periods of time, it definitely can wear on people's mental stability and then make it harder for them to rehabilitate into society and get like a normal job after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like solitary, like it's a serious punishment and it comes with like serious consequences.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Yep. Dangerous criminals in jail should be in solitary confinement. Yep. Hold up.
I think there's a wide variety of criminals in prisons, and mixed with the wide age range, it can be very easy for certain people to like gain power over others and recruit them to gangs. Per se, if they're like a predator, like there's kids who are like young, who can be technically younger than 18 in prisons that don't have like rules for minors. So that's super dangerous if there's like predators just in the prison population. And yeah, furthermore, just gang activity. There's really no other punishment for these people because they're already in prison and you certainly can't inflict physical harm on them. So there's no other punishment for these prisoners. So, yeah, I think definitely solitary is an option for short periods of time.
A lot of women who come forward about being sexually assaulted by guards are considered dangerous for like lying and put in solitary confinement for that. A lot of people who are considered dangerous for just being political activists are put into solitary confinement immediately because of that. And so like a lot of people have been put in solitary confinement for like spitting at a guard or a lot of other things like that, which I just think is not necessarily like a good determiner. And also when we say dangerous, and like especially because like you, Hunter, brought up about gang related things a lot, and gangs are a huge problem in prison, but that can cause a lot of racial profiling. A lot of people have been put in solitary confinement for like spitting at a guard or a lot of other things like that, which I just think is not necessarily like a good determiner. And if you look at solitary confinement, the like rates of people of color are so much higher than like the percentage of the population.
Do you have any other like alternatives to solitary confinement for prison, like for punishment?
I do. For example, something like a minor offense like that, you could just take away their hour in like the yard for like a day, or maybe like not like just like minor things in a prison, like making them do more chores or making them help out more around the prison, just as like a lighter punishment.
So like, why would you classify like spitting on a guard dangerous in a sense?
It's disrespectful.
I think to Hunter's point, I don't know. I think it's dangerous to the power structure.
Solitary confinement is has to do with race, gender, and religion. Can be a factor.
Okay. I mean, is this like systemically?
Yeah, systemically.
Okay, so going, like Jane was talking about how some women are put into these solitary confinement cells just for like saying that they were harassed or like raped by one of the officers, and there's like part of that power dynamic is like just women like considered to like be weaker, like they're not really going to believe her. It's just like, oh, she's just like trying to like get out of this punishment or whatever, and so she's more likely to just be thrown into a cell. But it's also very likely that being raped is a possibility for these women, just because of like the way that the prison system works. Like there's all these like dark hallways, and it's so easy for one of the correctional officers to just like go and do whatever he wants with her. And so I feel like it's just easy for her to just be thrown in there, being a woman, versus like a male doing like I don't know if he would like make the same claim, but I feel like it might even be a bit harder for him to do something of the same level and get that punishment.
What were the other factors?
Race.
Gender.
Let me share some stats. African Americans represent about 14% of Americans, 38% of incarcerated prisoners, but about 60% of people held in solitary confinement.
African American males or African Americans?
Yeah, what is
African Americans.
I feel like that's pretty straightforward.
What was the last one, Coach?
You want to go on?
Yeah.
60% of
Can you give me an example of systemic oppression in the United States currently, in the current prison system?
Yes. So currently, in jury systems, there's a lot of qualifications that people are considered to be eligible to serve on jury. For example,
Is that in the prison system? In the prison system, what
well,
is
I
it?
think it's part of the prison system because it's part of what sends people to
Exactly.
prison.
If a white man is on the stand and the jury
Yeah.
just looks at them and they're like, oh, let's hear this man's story, instead of just, they see a black man and they automatically, like, because of this implicit bias, like, assume that it's for the worse.
Yeah, but how is that systemic? How is there any laws or rules put in place that make the jury?
It's not necessarily
It
the
doesn't have to
laws.
be-
It's not
yeah.
explicitly written in the laws either. It's like just
I
society.
think it's the
like,
people in power that are kind of like
That's literally it.
enforcing how we do things.
Okay.
I think solitary confinement is a viable option as punishment for everyone.
Okay. So I think we can all agree on this one. People have to be held responsible for their actions.
I agree.
And if people know what's going to happen when they do certain things, one, they are more likely to not do it. And two, when they do end up doing it, they have to pay or they have to be held responsible for those actions. So that in the future they won't do this, or that people surrounding them will look at that punishment and say, I don't want this, so I'm not gonna do that.
At the same time, it's entirely possible that it's not an effective punishment,
Yeah.
then like it stops being a matter of the person, it starts becoming a matter of the safety and well-being of the people around that person.
Yeah,
Because at that point, you have to remove them from the population so that everybody else is safe, so that everybody else
for
is
sure.
well, and that will come at the cost of the safety and health of that individual. That's the trade that you have to make.
I agree with most all of your statements, but I think one big thing that we're not considering is there are specific groups of people who I think just should not, on a basis, be sent to solitary confinement, and I think that one of the qualifiers is if you're younger than 18 or legally considered a child in America, because it's proven that solitary confinement does some
Yeah, you can say.
freaking bad stuff to your brain especially if you're a kid, and it can leave some much more so than adults, some lasting impacts and some lasting mental scars that just completely harm someone's brain.
With the children thing, kids who are under 18, I see where you're coming from, but I have to say that there are some cases that kids need to, or even though they're kids, they have to be treated like adults for things that they do or they have to be treated like adults when they act like adults.
Any repercussion?
What if this, there's a case where this person can't be reintroduced to society and, just can't be rehabilitated and is dangerous in the prison? For example, a serial killer.
I think something important to consider is what is the purpose of prisons? Are we trying to get them reintroduced back into society, or are we just trying to keep them away from society and isolate them? Because if this serial killer has a mental illness that is stopping him from being rehabilitated, send him to a mental hospital institution, whatever.
But how do we make? But the question there is, how do we make sure the other people surrounding them are safe?
I think we just need better security. If a prisoner is managing to find a way to kill someone,
There's
regardless of
something wrong in the system.
regardless of how severe their crime was, I think there's just something wrong with the actual security.
You're describing the rationale for solitary confinement.
I think, with our focus on solitary confinement, we have to focus. I think we need to focus more on rehabilitation, not even just for mental illness, but because even if you look behind, there's some people who are just I don't know. I think we always like to put the blame on someone or something specific, when just as a whole, there's so many other factors that contribute to someone committing a crime, environmental or even chemical reasons that could have contributed. And so there's a number of different things that you can necessarily find the blame for. So I think just like putting such a harsh punishment on someone is just unreasonable because there's so many factors that we cannot judge.
There are factors, but that can't cloud.
Yeah, no.
our-
Yeah.
Given, I think there are factors, but everyone should be treated as equal in the
Yeah,
justice
I agree.
system. And those factors should not come, they should be judged on what they did.